I'm Grom, and welcome to our 249th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, we've got 2 panelists out of 4 missing. So we are going to soldier on with just the 3 of us. Anyway, our panel is going to tackle the question of what's wrong with contemporary presidential campaigns. Today's panel discussion begins with Patty Haskins, former member of the Wadsworth City Council and retired member of the faculty at Wadsworth Senior High School. Then Susan Hanlon, current member of the Wadsworth City Council and retired Dean of the College of Business, my old college, at the University of Akron. Patty, I'm asking you a question you may not, I may not have asked you or told you that I was going to ask you this question, but if you could wave a magic wand and change anything you wanted about current presidential campaigns, what would you change?
Actually, 2 things that I would change. Number one, I would make it shorter. However, this year being very different in that the Democratic candidate has just been named, or it actually was changed to someone else, it is going to be shorter as far as an actual campaign with the 2 actual candidates that will appear on the ballot in November. The other thing that I would change would be the removal of money from the campaign itself. Now, I realize it takes money to run a campaign, but with the infusion of million-dollar donors or multi-million-dollar donors, it has created an atmosphere where it can appear, whether rightly or wrongly, it can appear as if it's, very wealthy donors are able to contribute to a campaign to help a candidate win, and that there be a quid pro quo where the policies of that candidate then are changed to support the person making that multi-million-dollar donation.
Yeah.
To me, those are the 2 biggest problems. Now, there are other things that have happened in campaigns over the years. I mean, they're really quite different from the way they used to be. You think back to the 40s or the 50s where, or even before that, where the matter of campaigning wasn't done by this big rally type situation, but rather by basically barnstorming in various areas, getting in your car and driving to a woman's club meeting, or driving to a Kiwanis meeting, or to a elk meeting, this type of thing, and making a speech to 50 people and then getting back in your car and hightailing it to the next location. The other common...
Did that happen during presidential campaigns in the past? That type of campaign?
Oh, yes. Yes, very definitely. If you go back like to the 30s and the 40s, that was done quite often. They also, though, used trains, and that they would set up in the back of the train, and the train would pull into an area or into a town, and the president wannabe would stand at the back of the train and speak to whoever showed up at the train station and give their spiel. Now what it has changed into is there's no driving to anything. You simply get on your plane, fly into a major city, and both parties are doing this now, have a giant rally with tens of thousands of people, then get back on your plane and go home and wait a week. So, that's a little different. I mean, even, you go back to like McCain's campaign, which, what was that, 2008? I remember he had a bus and he had a bus, and Palin had a bus, and they would drive that bus around all through, particularly in swing states. I'm not seeing that now. I don't see anybody getting on a bus and going to all these various locations. Other things have changed too, and this is that concern me, in that where people are getting their information about candidates has changed. And this is because of the media that we have. It used to be that you got your information by radio. And then, of course, when the television came along, you got it maybe from television, but you also got it from the newspaper. And it was extremely important in order to gain the endorsement of a particular editorial staff or a particular newspaper, and people would wait for that. And I remember my parents looking at the Beacon Journal and reading their endorsements to determine, or to find out about various candidates and to learn what or possibly how they wanted to vote in a particular election. Newspapers, I think, have very little influence now. There's more influence being done on TikTok or on Facebook or other social media posts. And it's not being done by anyone with any type of expertise as far as politics are concerned, or heaven forbid, a reporter who actually would go out and try to find facts. You're seeing information there that's being put out by an influencer or someone who just has an opinion, whether it be a celebrity or a non-celebrity. I'm really kind of appalled by the number of people that state that they get most of their news from TikTok, as if that is a reliable journalistic source. But that's what they're basing, people are basing their vote on what they hear on sources that are unfact checked, that are not really well thought out, and that are very biased.
Who do you think TikTok would pick this time around?
It depends on who it is on TikTok that's giving the information.
Oh, I see. I've never seen TikTok myself.
I haven't either. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on any of the extra apps or anything like that. But you see reports, and it, to me, that tends to be a problem. And people are not, unfortunately, going to credible news sources.
Are there any left?
I think there are. I think if you, if we could actually have a debate, we had one, we could have another one. I think, and we've discussed all the fallacies with the presidential debate forum, but that is at least one way to directly see two candidates. You can hear for yourself what they think and how they feel, but people don't even bother to listen to this. I remember after the last debate, and particularly after the Republican primary debates, because Trump decided not to show, people didn't watch them. And so what they did is they went to their phones, and they signed on to various apps and looked to see what other people thought about it, and then based their opinion on what happened in the debate from that, rather than take the time to actually listen to the debate and listen to both candidates, or all of the candidates in case of the primary, in order to form a well-informed opinion of a candidate. It's almost as if the candidate, the actual campaigns have gotten lazy, because it is too easy to get in that plane, go to a rally, and then come back home. And both sides are doing that right now.
Yeah. How would you feel about a Harvard-style debate rather than the things that we call debates now, which aren't really debates?
And by a Harvard-style debate, what do you mean?
The kind of debates they have at Harvard, where there is a moderator, a single moderator, and they ask questions, and there's a time limit. And
Well, there is a standard form for debate where you have, you have the question posed to you, and then you argue that question, then there is rebuttal, and then there is cross rebuttal, and everything is timed out. The only problem with that form of debate, as opposed to what they're doing now that I can see, is that that style works on a single issue better, where you take that issue and you examine it, and then you rebut that issue and so forth. When you want to get into 5, 6, 7, 8 different areas, and you want to, discuss economics, you want to discuss the border, you want to discuss pro-life and abortion issues, when you want to discuss drugs, all of those things you want in foreign policy. I'm not sure the Harvard debate style stands up or would work in that particular case.
Got it. Susan, what are your thoughts on this subject?
Well, with my magic wand, I would probably change the two things that Patty said, but I do have a comment on a couple of those. First of all, you still can go to a small campaign event if you want to. You can have dinner with either one of the candidates if you want to pay anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000. So, right, they still do that for small groups, but it's pretty unobtainable for most people. And then the other thing about, newspapers being so relied upon and so credible and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I just finished reading, so I'm actually reading 2 books at the same time. One, I'm reading about Thomas Jefferson's daughter, the first daughter, and it's mostly about Thomas Jefferson. And then the other one I'm reading is about, I just finished one about Lincoln, and then I'm reading about the lead up to the Civil War. The newspapers lied terribly. I mean, right from the very beginning, they printed atrocious things, and they printed anonymous letters and all this kind of stuff. And so, the newspapers have always been a big influence and not especially objective. There's always a few, but there was a lot of untruthful advertising, all that sort of thing. And then the thing about the debates, what I think would be interesting is if they actually had a trained debate judge be the moderator, and really be somebody who almost score it, say, well, and I don't know exactly what you, but they have competitions in debating, and it would be interesting to have a trained debate judge there to call these people out and tell them ahead of time, we're really having a real debate. This is not, and if you don't answer the question, we're cutting you off. They did try to do some of that in the last one, if they went on too long or that sort of thing. But so other things that I would change, I don't think that there's enough focus on the right issues. It annoys me to no end to hear, unfortunately, both the candidates we have now, they don't seem to have any command of the facts. Neither one of them. They can't answer a question and go anything beyond the mere surface, if they even try to do that. It's just they're so general, and I think there's too many special issues involved, too much identity politics, and both the candidates, they both, we basically have 2 populist candidates now. It's just, I'm going to say what I think my special interests want to hear. And they're not really talking about the issues. And then the other thing, I think there's a lot of social issues that have come into not just presidential campaigns, but especially presidential campaigns that don't belong. it's not the role of government. A lot of these things, it's there are morality issues, there are social issues that, a president, you can't legislate morality, you can't legislate people's beliefs, and so they can't do anything about it anyways, but yet they continue to do that. And then that gets into all the horrible negative campaigning. I mean, and unfortunately, I know there's all kinds of statistics out there that show that it works, but I mean, you talk about not wanting to even listen to advertisements, is because you sit there and you're like, okay, I am pretty sure that at best 50% of what they just said is true. It's they, and they don't. I mean, like right now with Sherrod Brown. I mean, we haven't heard a peep from the Republican candidate Marino. We haven't heard a peep from him. I haven't, and all Sherrod Brown. Now, not all his ads, but a lot of his ads are just negative against Bernie Marino. Like, don't even say the dude's name. If you don't even say his name, and then I'll be like, who's even running against you? And I mean, I have voted for Sherrod Brown. I don't, but man, these ads he has out right now, it's going to make it really hard for me to vote for him again. And I fortunately just, I mean, he's from around here, relatively speaking, and I just have had I've heard a lot of good things about how he actually behaves, but the thing, I mean, and that's not presidential, but yeah, it's just too much negative. It's like Patty said, it's too long, although you're right, this one technically is shorter. The money, too much influence. I did a little bit of research about the money. The combined spending on the presidential elections in 1984, it was $226 million. In 2020, it was almost $4 billion spent by, now this would be anybody who ran in a primary, but anybody who was, on a ballot for a presidential campaign. But that's insane. I mean, I know it creates a lot of jobs, right? People making ads, printing flyers, all that kind of stuff. But that seems like a lot of money. and it is, you have too many people, the big donors, they have influence. I mean, they wouldn't give the money if they did it. So yeah, that's what I would change.
It's.
Go ahead, Patty.
I was just going to say, my big thing is, especially like in the debates, and they're asked questions, and in the ads, they keep telling me what's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, most of us know what's wrong. I mean, we know that there is an immigration problem. We know that there are problems with foreign policy. What I want to hear is, what are you going to do about it?
Right. And they don't have a clue.
No, they don't. And they'll make, they have a catchphrase that they use that's going to supposedly cover everything, but you don't see that plan, or that this is exactly what I am going to do in order to solve this problem. And if they don't have an answer to it, say, we're going to have to work on something. But to simply say there's a problem and I'm going to fix it, you've got to prove that to me.
Yeah. And overall, I think as far as presidential candidates go, I mean, we just don't have any statesmen or stateswomen. I mean, we don't have people who, I mean, I don't know, Patty, I think you or I are almost as prepared to be president as either one of the people that are running. I mean, really and truly, it's just this notoriety, this, I mean, it's just, well, of course, Abraham Lincoln, no one thought, I mean, he didn't think he was qualified to be president. And he was, always amazed that he ever got elected and all that. But yeah, it's just the quality of the candidates are bad. I mean, I guess that would be, if I could go back and re-wave my magic wand, I would get better candidates. We
I
just,
think if I could wave a magic wand, I'd get better voters.
well, that's true too.
One of the things that bothers me is that people vote for so many wrong reasons.
Stupid. Yeah, single issue. I can't stand that.
Yes, yes.
Well, I think there was speaking of race, which we weren't, to pick leaders of the country based on what race they are. When you think about the problems we've got right now with various Black public officials that are just doing some outrageous things, they were elected because of the color of their skin and not by any qualifications at all. I remember, I think it was in one of Obama's elections. Somebody published the voting results from predominantly Black precincts in Cleveland, and it was amazing how many precincts were 100% for Obama.
Yeah.
And then there were a few more that were like 99 point something or other for Obama. But I think that if I could wave a magic wand, I'd get somebody who was a very, very good, smart orator to begin preaching on this topic. We're not going to pass any laws that tell you who you should vote for and why, and so forth. But I think that any time we're looking at making voting decisions based on some kind of a personal preference that has nothing to do with how a person's going to perform in office.
Well, right. I mean, I think this time too, there will be plenty of people that will vote for Harris just because she's a woman, because they just, they would like to see a female president.
Right.
And of course that goes both ways, because there's always been people out there that will not vote for a person if they are a woman.
They're both.
That will not vote for
right.
a person. And that's still actually very prominent. And I know some people that are like that and have made those comments. So that is, I would like to see somebody that is intelligent, that speaks well, but that doesn't seem to fly with people. They want the entertaining, Joe Schmo you can have the beer with. I mean, that's the question I hear. Would I go out and have a beer with them? I don't care if I'd go out.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Are they bright enough and have policies that will affect change and actually solve problems in the country?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, and it's been true for a long time, but especially probably, I don't know, I would say since the 1980s, maybe. It's two different sets of skills and attributes to be a good campaigner, right? A good candidate versus actually be a good administrator.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, and so, yeah, the skills it takes to, go out there and raise money and be good in front of a television camera, all that kind of stuff is very different than the skills it takes to be the leader of this nation.
Right.
I read I guess it was I'll call it a novel many, many years ago about a presidential campaign, and it was about the Truman and Dewey campaign, and that little town in New Hampshire, Gobbler's Notch or whatever the place is, that votes at midnight, and they're like 12.
And
okay,
I know. And they were telling this story about how they found out well before the election who was going to win. I think that the town overwhelmingly was supporting Dewey. And then on election day, turned out that they voted for Truman. And somebody questioned the voters and asked why, how do we get it so wrong? Well, this one guy said, well, Dewey was on this train during one of those campaigns you were talking about, Susan. And all of a sudden, the train sort of jerked and he lost his balance and he fell down. And he said, damn that conductor. Well, it turned out this one voter from Gobbler's Notch, or whatever place it was an ex-railroad man. And he said, I changed my vote because he shouldn't have said that about the conductor. That made all the difference in the world to this guy. And I think that there are a lot of voters out there that are that wishy-washy about things. I would like to see some kind of maybe part of that multi-billion dollars that goes into a campaign would go into a voter education program.
Yeah.
And teach them that you can't vote based on race, religion, gender, habit. We're picking somebody that's going to be a significant influence in the world, how it works out, or at least the Western world. Anyway, that was, my concern about that. The book was called A Flag Full of Stars.
Oh, okay.
You remember that? It was
but I love to read historical fiction, so.
Yeah. I think the author's name was Tracy something or other.
Yeah.
It's been a long time ago, and my memory's nowhere near.
I've always been interested in the fact that, both parties complain about the national debt and how we're trillions of dollars in debt. And everybody, complains about the fact that Social Security is going to be bankrupt in X number of years and Medicare will go bankrupt. But we think nothing of spending, which they predict will be over $1 billion this year on this campaign, which is money.
Well, like I said, it creates jobs. I mean, they've tried to have campaign finance reform, but the Supreme Court said it was an infringement on your First Amendment rights. That spending money on a campaign is your right of expression, free expression. So that avenue of saying, you can only spend X amount. That's not ever going to happen.
Well, and other countries do that. I mean, they have.
Oh, I know they do, but they don't have our constitution.
Unfortunately, we're nowhere near it. And unfortunately, we have the, billionaires in this country that are willing to make the donations, and the people that are willing, like you said, to go to fundraisers and pay, $500,000 in order to have dinner with a candidate.
Can you think any country that elects really good people?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Can you think of any country that a sophisticated election system that really, I mean,
that's a good point.
Seems like whoever yells the loudest.
I mean, like I said, we and I think I've talked about this before, but we just this spring or summer actually traveled in the British Isles. So we went to all those countries, and every time you talk to a local, they all complained. They all complained about their leaders. They complained about their elections because it was election time there. They were electing their European Union people, and I was just like, oh, well, I don't feel so bad then.
Well, that's what I mean when I say that our voters need to be educated.
Of course, that's a country that's had how many prime ministers in the last 5 years? So
but I mean, it was the people in Ireland saying this, the people in Scotland. I mean, it was just Ireland's where I talked to the most people, and they just were not happy.
Interesting.
But I talked to a handful of people. You know what I mean? You can't generalize, but it was
Oh.
interesting that it wasn't that different.
I think our time is about up.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.